So the minutes, anyone have any issues with the minutes? Any questions, changes, comments? Motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting? Al?
Wasn't there, so.
You weren't there. Second?
Second.
Okay, good. So next meeting, May 22nd, special meeting at 4:30. Hopefully everybody can make that. Other correspondence?
Wednesday?
Yeah, it's a Wednesday. Well, you won't be sailing yet, will you?
Talking about it.
Huh?
We were just talking about it.
When do they start?
They started, yeah.
Oh, did they? Really? Wednesday night?
The Intrepid folks are out there.
Wow, okay.
Whatever. All right.
When you get two boats there.
Well, just letting you know, we didn't have camera, some things up with the camera, so we just have audio with the Zoom audience.
Okay. What time's on?
It's on.
Tom, can you hear us?
Muted.
Muted. Tom, you're muted.
Yes, I can hear you. I'm here.
Good, good. Let's see. So other correspondence since the last meeting, received a request to enlarge the print on the sign at the entrance to Cockles Harbor regarding personal watercraft. I passed that one on to the harbor master, who I think responded well, took care of that. That's about the only thing we got since the last meeting. Liaisons, briefing. I know you had questions, you guys, at the last work session regarding the fees, and we went back and forth through emails since then. I think I pretty much addressed the questions that came up.
Yeah.
Anything else?
No,
Good.
not that I'm aware of, Bill.
Okay. Good. Bo, you got anything for us?
Yeah, a couple of things. So we're in full swing, right? Summer now. Everybody who does anything with a boat knows that. We have all the aids navigation are in, all the anchorage buoys, everything. So our waterways are open for business without a doubt. We began patrol this past Saturday. So as of Wednesday, we'll have 7-day-a-week patrol again through the rest of the summer. I looked into getting a new buoy for that hazard off of Ward's Point there, the old pier there. If you recall, the Pridwin had actually asked us about maybe getting a hazard marker for the rocks there as well, back when they had applied for moorings. So just the buoys alone shipped here be about $1,000 a piece, plus tackle, plus. I've reached out to the Pridwin to see if they're interested in maybe partnering with us on the purchase and then, parlaying that into we maintain it and do whatever. We would handle getting them permitted with the Coast Guard and all of that sort of stuff. So functionally, if they do want to partner, then it would be a donation to the town. Everybody's okay with us getting another $1,000 buoy for that area at minimum down off of Ward's Point there.
What about asking the property owner?
Yeah, that's a potential. I could reach out to them. Yeah, yep.
I mean, that's.
Yeah, I tried to run down sort of where it came from and who was responsible for it, and I got a lot of this. So, but that is a good thought. I can reach out to them and see if they're interested. I mean, functionally, we have money for buoys and waterways management. Like it's a thing. It's just one of those things that I wanted to, before I went and spent $1,000 plus on something, just have you guys hear it out loud, say,
Does it have to be, is that a high-tech buoy? Couldn't it just be a big Taylor round buoy or something?
Potentially, and that's another alternative. I was just trying to go with something of similar size and configuration that was there. Also same or similar size and configuration to what we currently work with. So that way it kind of fits into our whole, obviously smaller is better, but for point of reference, it would be like roughly the same size as like the number 5 buoy when you're
Right.
coming into Cockles Harbor, or those 2 bigger anchorage area buoys that we put into West Neck last year. Number 11 in Cockles Harbor is the same size, so it's sort of medium size. It's not huge like 1 and 3 out of Cockles Harbor, but it's not small like 7 and 8 up inside Deer Harbor, or 4. Or those ones are really small too.
Those are very small.
Yeah.
They're the towns, all right.
Yeah, we put them in. Yep, yeah. They just get chopped
But
up. a
even
lot,
then,
so we
I
don't-
mean, I don't know what they're probably only 500, but.
Everything is insanely expensive, without a doubt.
Whoever pays for, 3 extra markers.
Right, yeah, you guys handle everything beyond 12 up inside there. Right.
Pay for, maintain them,
Right.
license necessary.
Yeah.
Register with the Coast Guard.
Yeah, yeah. So it's, there's a lot of different ways to go about it. I just wanted to say we're working on it, thinking about it.
Noted.
Thank you. I think that's probably it for right now. I don't know. You guys have enough other stuff to think about, so if you have any questions, let me know.
All right.
Got a good water report.
Huh?
Got a good water report.
Yeah, it's actually great. That's a great point. So we're still doing the Blue Water Task Force water sampling. We just switched to twice a month. So yeah, I did water sampling this past Monday. Everything is A-okay still. Skip today, next Monday I'll go again, and then in June 1st, where it's every Monday. So we'll have nonstop reporting from that. We are planning with the East End Marine Law Enforcement Task Force. We're setting up dates for task force level MSD inspections. Those may or may not ultimately pan out depending on how everybody's schedule really shakes out. But nonetheless, we plan those with South Sag Harbor, Southampton, a few other partners. So that's on the agenda. The FDA is keenly interested in Cockles Harbor, not the marina specifically, but the entire waterway and its tributaries. I got a message from the DEC the other day looking for information regarding our town dock down there. FDA is FDA, so I don't know why, but Cockles Harbor is on their agenda right now.
Is that for this shellfish?
Yes, yep. So FDA sets regulations and then hands those off to DEC. DEC has to figure out how to implement them, and they've usually done so by surprising us with things that we didn't like and have to go back and forth. So luckily we have a great relationship with Matt Richards at Shellfish now, in part as a result of that closure from last year. So he's kind of coming to us first now and hopefully keeping that door of communication open.
Bo, real quick, can I get a copy of that letter that you got, just so I can see it?
It was no letter. Yeah, I mean, I'll share it with you. It was just an email from Matt that said, can you send me the regulations regarding the town dock? That was it.
Oh, okay, yeah, I'd like
I
to
can
see it
send it
anyway.
Anything specific you're interested in paying attention?
The other question was, you're doing the testing twice a month. Are you doing that new closed area in Cockles as well? Is that part of that?
No, the testing that we're doing is the same testing that was established about this time last year. The 2 anchorages, one in Cockles Harbor, one in West Neck, and then just off of the emergency services dock in Deering Harbor. So there hasn't been any change in that.
Okay, is it possible to somehow get the one that's still closed, monitored, so that we have some sort of documentation as to what's really going on there?
Sure, I can look into it, find out what the cost would be for adding another site. Obviously, there's a little complexity in adding another site physically, but I can look into it, find out. It's worth noting that the testing that we're doing holds absolutely no water or authority with the regulatory bodies. It's just data for our own use. So
Yeah, exactly. That's why I think it might be important to have the data in the closed area.
Which is certainly a reasonable request, so I can look into it.
Okay, thanks.
Yes,
That's it.
while you're up, and this is old business, new business. So 53, chapter 53-6, 7, and 8. which is
Sensitive.
which is has been the most revised and changed and rewritten section of the, or 3 sections of the chapter. And just to put it to bed, so originally I had drafted it along with all of Tom's input, and it turned into a pretty lengthy, as I mentioned previously, sort of Byzantine set of rules and regulations inside the code. So you all have this. This is the document at the top says draft legislative findings 53-6. This is Bo's version. After my draft, Bo took a shot at it, came up with a revised version that's much simpler as far as the code portion goes. And then a lot of the rules and regulations are set aside and something that would be maintained, say on the website, town website. So we had another go around since the last meeting. Been revised again. I sent it out to everyone for feedback. The only person who gave me any feedback was Tom. His input, he came back and forth a couple of times. His first set, we responded to. I put some changes in also. As it stands now, Tom's most recent email, had some further concerns. I think the best way to handle this, as I said last time, is to submit my detailed code section for this, as well as Bo's redrafting of all these sections together with his rules and regulations to the town attorney and town board. Let them parse through it, determine what they want to put into code, what, if anything, they want to put into rules and regulations. I think it makes a lot of sense to go with Bo's simpler format and rules and regulations that can be changed without having to go through a whole legislative process. Even Tom's letter, most recent email, refers to, future changes to be considered regarding aquaculturists. So this is going to be we need some flexibility with this. So I think it's I'll submit all of it. But I think what we have now is what we should put into the final draft when we put it together. I don't know if anyone else had anything else to add to it. I mean, it's gone around.
I'm good with that, Bill.
You what?
I'm good with that, Bill.
Perfect. All right.
Is there any provision for the public to use, the 400 feet of bulkheading in Dickerson?
In both versions, there's
Was something about it.
yeah.
Yeah, so there's no real delineation, right? And this is maybe something that we will have to look at as part of this process. There's no real delineation of where the town's sections of bulkhead, right? So the sort of the southern section with the public float, and then that southernmost northeast running or north-south running section where the police float is. Right, and shortly north of that is where the town property actually ends right there. The town owned exclusively by the town owned property ends right there, just north of where the police float. Thereafter, heading north to the old Dickerson property is a co-owned piece of property by the town and the county. It was purchased with CPF funds, et cetera, et cetera. Some context for the existing law for Dickerson Creek would be that was a largely unusable space when the original legislation was drafted, right? So the space that is now owned by CPF and the county, or was purchased by CPF and the county. Since it has been refurbished and opened up, it's all largely usable space, right? We have crab pots down there, people like clams, we have swimming and all kinds of things. So this particular legislation only really looks at that original section, but it does not formally delineate it. And arguably, because we have some town ownership of that other section, co-ownership, and it is a bulkhead, at Grace's Lane, it could include all of that space as well, right? So it may be a gray area that we want to keep. It may be a gray area that we need to clarify and maybe set up some, hopefully not different rules for one side of a piling, But I would suggest, just based on my experience dealing with the county, that some vagary may be to our advantage ultimately. Otherwise, we may get mired in mountains and mountains of regulatory questions and comments and concerns. So just a thought.
We have sort of joint control of the land portion.
Correct.
But do we have joint control over the water portion? Or is that just town? Just us?
That's town water, right? That's just town water, right? So the joint ownership is just for the terrestrial earth. So it obviously ends at mean high water, which is a bulkheaded area. So there is it stops at the bulkhead. So functionally, we would be trying to regulate just the use of a piece of property that is owned by us and somebody else.
But here we could talk about, if we wanted, and I'm not suggesting we would,
Right.
Controlling who's tying up, for instance.
Up until they make contact with the dock, they're on over our property, yes. But
when they're tied on, are they actually, then that's separate?
they're tied to, they're on our property and the county's property. It's right, it'd be, it's a joint
They
ownership.
could stay there on a skyhook.
Please. So maybe that needs to be looked at a little more thoroughly as part of this process, sort of phase 7 of this process, or however many we're up to now.
Yeah.
But as it stands right now, it would probably fall underneath the regulation just as it is. Which,
Did the county chip in for the bulkhead?
Yes,
yes,
Yes.
yeah.
50-50.
Yeah, it's a joint ownership property, like there's no, we deal with this with the hunting on their properties all the time, on co-owned properties, right? So I have a lot of relationship with the county, sort of working through these things. And it may not be that big of an issue. My guess is, generally speaking, when county funds are used, they view it as a county asset to be used by all county taxpayers without general restriction. So there may be some complications there where that they would want to be, for lack of a better term, a free-for-all. We've come to agreements previously on hunting uses of their property. I don't see how this would be much different, if we use that same sort of context, where they've allowed us to sort of govern it in the interest of sanity. So I think they would be team players. It just may add layers of things, that's all.
Right. Okay. Thanks, Bo. Let's see, as far as my own comments, so since the last meeting, we had to go before the Suffolk County Planning Commission again regarding the moratorium. Stephen appeared and managed to get another unanimous decision to grant us an extension on the moratorium, which is good. The only other thing I wanted to point out was there was a change of vessel form that Bo put together. So it's online, the town clerk has it, and it requires all the, complete description of the vessel that was on the mooring, complete description of the vessel to replace it, just so we have all the details as far as length, depth, the draft and width, and we can determine whether it makes sense to permit the new boat to go there. On new business, we've got one mooring application. John Catula.
Weren't that two that initially came out?
There were two.
Another one.
Coles was on the list, but had already been.
There's a guy over by the end of
I put it over to the next meeting because they had some reference to 150-foot regulation, which I have no idea what they're referring to. So rather than get bogged down and trying to figure out what that's all about, I just put it over to the next meeting.
The Tonus.
No, it's-
Right.
So Catula, there's two different sets of GPS points on this. So I called him up and asked him which one he was looking for. It's just, yeah, they're both done in decimal form, so I don't know why there would be a difference, but generally he would like to be as close to the Tongan Creek dock as he can be without being in the way or in the channel. So he picked this location. He's got a boat that he's got one boat he keeps down in Tongan Creek, and the other he needs to put out on a mooring. Where he's located there, he's got about 7 feet of water, but I would say any place we can put, if we can move him further west, it would probably be more beneficial to him. I just don't know how, I haven't been down there in a boat in 20 years, so I'm not too familiar with that water.
If I may, he had told me that he was looking for a spot a couple of weeks ago, and I just kind of listened to him. And I thought that his original intention was to go somewhere in between. I guess it's what is that mooring there? C3562, I think it is down there in Foxton.
Yeah.
562, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, in between that and the point. I thought he wanted to go somewhere in between there, but he may have changed his mind since then.
Well, he said he didn't want to be out in front of anyone's house. I think that 3562, I think is Mashamik's
That's their stake and pole.
stake and pulley down there.
Is
So
that
that's
what that
all.
is?
Yeah.
So that's all Mashamik's land there. So I don't know if we can move him directly north of that, just below the speed buoy or what, but
Directly north of him is pretty much the channel. Where he's
well,
got the
I mean,
pin.
when I said north of 3562, I meant like below, between him and Congdon's speed buoy. So moving where move that pin west.
Like just off the point on the other side of Foxen Creek?
Yeah. If you're just
Oh,
going.
you want
There is a technical prohibition on putting moorings in Condon Creek, except to riparians, right? So I don't know where we cross into what is Condon Creek, going back that way.
Yeah.
If he's obviously making a good faith effort to try to be outside of that regulation, then maybe his suggested place would work.
My suggestion was to go a little south of where the hand is, south and west, I guess, on the inside of Foxen, if that means anything to anyone.
It's in Foxton, it's outside of
Inside.
Congdon. So,
Yeah, I wish I could show you where my arrow was, but
as far as depth goes,
There's a pretty, we have the police mooring inside there, and there's a pretty deep channel that goes in from where he is, sort of parallel in the shoreline, heading towards that stake and pulley, and then it kind of fares back out and gets real shallow quick south of that. There's one spot
to the
there.
south of the pulley line.
Right.
this is putting it in himself.
Yeah. I was thinking of the northwest kind of, just south.
You're saying here?
Can't see it. Cameras on.
Cameras
Yeah,
not working?
somewhere right in there, like
Oh, he is.
that.
It's working.
Yes, he can.
I was thinking
There,
somewhere
yeah.
right there
Oh,
where the hand
I
is.
see Christina's hand, like on the screen.
Yeah. Yeah, if there's water, I don't see why not.
Is John here? John not at the meeting, is he?
Uh,
Yeah, okay.
Maybe run it by him.
Does
Yeah.
that give him any, does that give him any swing?
Well, it's got to be a little further than that.
I mean,
Yeah,
Well,
probably
like
yeah.
28 feet.
Yeah, right.
Going out further is gonna block the channel, no?
yeah, I guess we really need to know what kind of water's in there.
What's wrong with what he's asking for?
Yeah.
Oh, we can put him there.
Oh, I
I
don't
just thought if there's any way of getting him further west, that's all. He just, he put himself out there just to be out of everyone's way. But he's fine with that location that he picked.
All right, well,
He picked it.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah,
Okay.
if he's fine with it. I mean, I don't see
No,
a problem.
I just had a conversation with him and he told me what he was trying to do. And I just thought whatever we can do for him, we'll try to do.
Yeah.
Give him what he wants.
Yeah. So Al, you're right with it?
Yeah.
James?
Yeah, I'm good.
Matt? Mark? Yeah. I'm good.
Yeah.
Good. All right. Good. 7-0. So old business, we've got the revisions or the changes I made to the revisions we talked about last time to 5311. D, we're talking about width of docks and had been narrowed down to just docks in general as opposed to private and commercial. We bumped it back out to have provisions for both private and commercial. And Skylar's going to tell us what the numbers are for the width for a commercial dock and the size of a float.
Sure. So our fixed dock varies from 8 to 10 feet on the main sections of it. And then we also have what I would call like a main floating dock. And that varies from about 7 foot 6 inches to 8 foot 4 inches wide. So those are the main trunks. And then the individual slips, the floats vary from 4 foot to 5 foot 6 wide. And then the fingers, like we have some fixed fingers that stick out, but they're relatively small. They're only 2 feet wide. So we have like a variety of things going on.
So
I would say that while 8 foot sounds really wide, if you have people going both ways, that's like probably if they're having, you would anticipate them having a dock cart or something like that. Any more narrow than that would be kind of restrictive.
So we looked around as far as new commercial docks go, it's extremely limited. And I'm sure, 8 foot and 8 foot would be overkill, but considering what might have to be done to existing commercial docks if they need to be repaired or replaced so that they're not non-conforming and fighting against that, probably makes sense to stick with 10 foot wide and 8 foot wide on a float, something in that range.
Don't we want to, wouldn't that be, if they were repairing those docks, wouldn't that be sort of like something grandfathered unless they were trying to expand them?
In kind and in place.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know that I thought we wanted to kind of address this code so that somebody couldn't come in and build a 300 foot by 10 foot dock.
Yeah,
I mean, where would that be? I don't know. But just to preclude that possibility.
yeah, we've reduced the length down. I honestly don't, like I said, if it was going to be a new dock, I don't think there's any way they could go with 100 foot with, or maybe they could with 10 foot wide fixed dock. As far as kind of place, so they'd only have to make it less. If it's a repair, they don't even have to make it less
They're
conforming.
just doing it in kind in place, it would be okay.
Right.
If they wanted to make it bigger,
And it's an alterations.
then there's that's something else again.
Would
So-
that make any difference whatsoever if it was already a non-conforming structure, or am I really making things complicated?
No, that's what we were talking about. If it's non-conforming, then they have to stay in kind and in place.
Okay. I mean, we would encourage them to conform if possible, but that's nothing here yet. That's just there when it comes, right?
Yeah. So for new structures, I mean, I can't imagine when we went around the island and tried to figure out where you could put a new commercial dock, it's extremely limited. It's right back down around where we just were looking at Tula's mooring. So I think we can be fairly restrictive. It's just, I'm looking for feedback on what we consider reasonable as far as the width. If it's going to be used as a commercial dock and like Skylar mentioned, if you want to get back and forth with carts, you know, it's got to be at least,
The yacht club, I think, is around 6 feet, I think.
yeah, I don't see two people trying to get by each other on carts. I mean, I could,
I don't think
That's
it's,
that's a kind of different layout. You're talking about like going towards the launch?
yeah, the fixed dock that goes to the launch.
Right. There's not like, I mean, since there's not a lot of boats that are set up there, I think the use is kind of different, right?
There's a lot of people bringing carts back and forth.
No, I know, but like if there were like 16 boats tied up to that dock, it'd be pretty different.
Yeah,
But it's just.
but if people are bringing their stuff out to a mooring, I mean, what's the difference? There's like a lot more moorings than there are in Cockles Harbor.
Well, I can just tell you that it happens on our dock.
Right,
That's all
I'm
I can
sure it does.
tell you, yeah.
You know, I'm not saying that, you know, your dock should stay there and be maintained and whatever, but I'm thinking in terms of
future build.
down the way where I don't see, you know, like if, you know, if something happens to whatever, it's a giant storm and something washes out somewhere and all of a sudden now you're going to rebuild it, you know, put new docks in.
Peter?
So, yeah, I mean, you know, you can repair in kind, everybody agrees with that. I want to make sure that Cockles Harbor in a nor'easter loses the whole end, the L of their dock. Now it's not there, so now it's not technically a repair. I still think they should be allowed to rebuild it, or the Pridwin, or the dock is pre-existing non-conforming. If it's taken out in a storm, I mean, so there's only pieces of it left,
Act
some
of
pilots
God.
here and there that. So just, it's
Cover
a
that.
fine line between repair and replace.
Well, we've drawn a clearer line
Okay.
so that repair is viewed separately than altering and modifying, as far as requiring it to be less non-conforming. So repair you can do without having to make it less non-conforming. That's one of the changes we want to make.
What about replacement? Where does that fall?
So repair and replacement so it's semantics.
Okay.
You know, repair and replace are basically the same, but altering and modifying are different.
Right. Well, as long as replacement due to a storm damage falls under repair, I mean, I know you guys kind of think that now, but just, you're setting code up for future WMAC, future town board, 20 years from now, looking at this, and you don't want some of the existing commercial guys to get stuck if somebody's interpreting it differently.
Right, so, what the way it reads is or the way we're looking to change it, if less than 50% of the dock is existing, or they have to replace more than 50% of the dock, let's put it that way, then it's required to be less non-conforming. So to your point, if Cockles Harbor or one of the major commercial docks is wiped out, they would be required to make it less non-conforming. So what we'd be looking to then is the new code rules, and that's what I'm addressing here is, what rules do we want to put in there that they'd have to conform to if they had to rebuild a dock that was wiped out? So do we want to, stick with 8 to 10 feet?
Well, I would say that if through an act of God, it's like Cockles Harbor's dock was wiped out, as long as they replaced it in kind with what was there, I think that's okay. I mean, not 100 feet bigger or something different, but what's there. I mean, I guess that is a function of documentation.
I think that should hold true for all docks.
Well, yeah. I mean, like any private dock that
Right.
gets wiped out. I mean, if it's like along, Nostrum Parkway or someplace. I mean,
All right, so let's come up with a number here. Are we go with 8 or 10 feet on the width of the dock?
you said 8 feet, right?
Ours varies from 8 to 10.
I think that 10 feet is more adequate. I've been down the docks before, and it can, with two carts or something like that, it can be a problem. It's 6 or 8 feet. I think the 10 is more adequate.
I mean, I agree with
So we
it.
don't need to put this in there. I mean, if it's a new commercial dock,
Right.
you know, you're gonna replace yours 8 or 10 feet wide, depending on where it was. You know, if somebody's coming to us for however they found the piece of property to do it and saying they want to build a new commercial dock, this is what we're trying to legislate now. Do you want them to make it that big or do you want them to make it smaller?
Well, we're looking for small.
Well, let's make it smaller.
I'm looking for.
But we're protecting the people who already have these docks and are in business.
Okay,
6 feet, how's that?
I think 6 is a little late
Yeah.
for safety. I mean, when you're dealing commercial stuff, you gotta deal with, I think, a reasonable.
We don't have a single dock that's 6 feet wide on what I would call the main trunks of our dock.
You need to accommodate people going in both directions. You have electric stanchions that are inside the dock.
So you're looking for a new structure somewhere. We don't know where this might be, but that would be okay to be 10 feet.
Well, I'm saying 6, I thought 6 was shallow, it was.
Well, I'm just saying, you know, you're talking about
Yeah.
some thing that
Yeah.
doesn't exist
That
now.
doesn't exist and probably would exist.
You know, do you
There's no
want
place- there's no
another
place
thing
to
that
do it.
big to exist is the question that
Because
we're
if
asking.
someone's gonna make the effort to establish a commercial dock, it should be functional. And I don't think 6 feet is going to be that. My personal opinion, but I mean.
Well, no, from a commercial, if you're a commercial operator and you want to have a dock, you want it to be as wide as you can make it, probably,
Right.
you know, to a point.
But I think
Like a pier.
But as a body that's trying to legislate into the future, do we want more commercial docks? I mean, you know, that's the question, I guess. I mean, this is addressing something that's not yet built.
right. Last time I went to the extreme of having the same rules apply from private to private to apply to all docks. And that was rejected. So I'm coming back and we're breaking it out now again to private and commercial with different sets of criteria. So we had it down to 5 feet last time because that's what private docks are. Commercial docks were 10 feet. So I'm looking to see if we can come up with a number that works for a new commercial dock. You know, do we want to go beyond 5 feet? 5 feet seems like it wouldn't work. Wouldn't be as, you know, wouldn't have the safety or utility that a wider dock would have. Sounds to me like 8 feet would work. I don't think we need to go or stay with the 10 feet that was in the code previously. And, you know, the chances of this happening are pretty slim, but again, it could happen.
So why don't you just not have any more commercial docks and just, the people who have what they have, maintain what they have, and, you know, this is the dock code and that's what it is.
What if the town were to do a dock? And they're gonna be held to this restriction as well, no?
Well, there's all sorts of separate rules that apply to town-owned docks, so I'm not too concerned about that.
Okay.
We seem to draft a new piece of legislation for every town. So, you know, all right, look, we're getting bogged down on something here. We got to move on. We'll be here till 11 o'clock tonight.
No, but pick a number.
I mean, I think, no, let's go with 8 feet. I mean, I think Skylar's point is well taken. It's like, it's gotta be viable. If it's gonna be commercial, if we're gonna do it, I mean.
If you're going to do it, you got to, it should be usable.
Whether
fine.
we wanna do it, that's a separate thing. It's like, if you're gonna do it, it should.
But if you didn't have any provision to build commercial docks,
Right.
then you wouldn't be worrying about it. You know, I'm not saying that what that's right or not right, but I mean, if our intent is to sort of limit things.
Well, so we limited it to 100 feet. You know, if you're going to build a commercial dock, well, you know, you would think it would have to be a,
So all docks are limited to 100 feet.
well, except for everything else we're going to discuss tonight. Yeah, just exceptions and other things, but
I make a motion that we limit to 8 feet.
Fine. But
yes, but what?
so the length is 100 feet,
Yes,
unless it's maybe outside waters.
right.
in a commercial spot that we don't know where that might be, but
8 feet, Al?
Yeah, that's
8
fine,
feet,
that's
fine.
fine. It's-
8 feet,
it's a moot point.
8 feet, 8 feet. I'm good. You're good.
I'm good.
Tom? How about that?
Good.
8 feet. Whew. Never thought that would take 10 minutes.
Can we touch base on one more thing on here? Is that all right? Can we touch base on one of the other items in here? Are we working down all of them? Sorry.
I'm working down the list.
I'll wait then.
We haven't even gotten to the width of the float
Yeah.
yet. We had 12 feet before. You just mentioned 8 feet on the float width. I think coming down from 12 to 8 is a pretty significant reduction for the size of the float. Does that work?
Is that safe?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, yeah, we vary from 7.6 to 8. Or that's our main trunk. Yeah, our like floats with boats on either side are only 4 foot to 5.6, so. Okay, we seem to make that work, so.
That works?
8?
8. All right.
Can I say something? What, when you're considering this part of considerations, 4 guys out at 2 AM battling winds of 50 to 60 knots, and they're safe. So,
How often did that happen?
Well, it happened like a month ago. Yeah, and I was out there, so I can tell you.
How
Yeah,
many boats did you have on the dock at that point?
at least a dozen.
Really?
Yeah,
Wow.
maybe 18, yeah.
Well, I don't think we can legislate for everything that possibly happens. Who was it who used to be, always come up with what ifs? 8 feet. Thanks, John.
them carts.
Yeah, no, I understand, but it's a rare condition, for me, I wouldn't have been out there in 60-mile-an-hour winds, that's why people have insurance, I guess. But,
I was gonna say, I don't think people would like us with that philosophy at our place, yeah.
probably not.
Yeah.
That's why we shouldn't have any more commercial docks. All right, so moving down this is just the stuff that we went over last time. Chocking. So last time we had chocking prohibited, but the point was made that it should only be in areas that are less than 2.5 feet. So the purpose of it isn't so that the dock sits on the bottom. In the areas where it's over 2.5 feet, it shouldn't be a problem. So that's why that change was put in.
We skipped the one that I was gonna talk about.
Go ahead.
The splash boards, everyone seems to have an opposition to that, or a lot of people did, and I'm just curious why. Like, we have instances where like we would lose boats, like last year, we had a boat say that it was sitting low in the water, I went over there and it was completely sitting on the ground, it was completely sunk. And that they had splash boards, and I'm just saying my experience and what we deal with at the marina is that it definitely saves boats from sinking. So I understand that there's some fallout environmentally, but I think the boat sinking is maybe worse than the splash board existing. So just wanted to understand where people were coming from, because it seemed like a pretty unanimous, like.
Well, basically, the point of it is that if you require splash boards, the conditions are probably too violent to warrant a new dock.
I mean,
So-
like we have them, I think we would be in rough shape without them. And I think that would probably.
You have them, then you're covered under it.
Well, I'm saying for other people, this isn't in my own self-interest. I'm just saying, I'd rather,
But anyone who has them would be covered under pre-existing non-conforming. So if they were removed, if they were destroyed, they could replace them.
okay, I guess, to me, it seems like more of a security for the integrity of like the boat not sinking and polluting the water than the ramification of having it and what the fallout is there. But maybe I tried to Google a little bit and research, and I didn't make it too far, but it sounded like someone here had some literature that said something.
Yeah, there's a good bit of literature on it. Primarily, it's got to do with the energy transfer of a wave coming up against a splashboard. It's driven down into the bottom and scours the bottom out.
Sure, okay,
So environmentally, what you do is you lose whatever's growing in that area. So it rips up, causes erosion. You don't have any more grasses growing. You lose habitat. Once you lose habitat, then you don't have an area for, fish to spawn, and it's
I guess my feeling is we're going to let people do this. I want them to do it as safely as possible. And I feel like we're picking one side or the other, and maybe that is the better side, but.
That's the whole point is to keep docks in places that are safe.
Right. Well, I don't think we're particularly exposed, but, you know, I can just say that, like, we are much better off with them than without them. And, you know, I understand ours is a unique scenario, but that's just the one I'm exposed to most often.
And again, you have them, if they were needed to
Right.
be replaced, you can replace them.
Okay, I just want people to build docks that are, you know, that they're not going to be making problems for
I
them.
think part of the thing was, I wasn't here for this, but part of it is that people building these docks, you know, where it's a questionable spot to build the dock, all of a sudden they realize, well, I need splashboard because it's really a bad space to have a dock. And then they're putting splashboard, then it's still a bad place to have a dock.
Right.
And I think that maybe that was the rationale.
That is the major rationale behind it.
I think there's also I think that there's a distinct thing there where it actually has a negative impact on on neighboring properties as well, and the shoreline. That was another concern that I had.
Are we gonna delineate whether it's on the inside water or outside water?
No, this would be, as it's written, this would apply to both inside and outside waters. I think I think there's much less need for it on inside waters because the conditions don't warrant in most cases. Yeah.
I could make an argument the other way.
Well, you know, but
Right, I mean, there's a good fetch like where you are.
Right.
You know?
there's a pre-existing application of splashboards, they can
Right.
replace them.
Right, I mean, like the Deering Harbor has splashboards, I think, a couple places like that. I guess the real meat of this is gonna be talking about where docks should be and shouldn't be.
Right.
If we get
Yeah, I
there.
mean,
If they're gonna be docks in certain spots that we're trying to maybe not have docks, you know, then those might need splashboards. But like you're saying, you don't wanna build something that's not.
I don't think it's inappropriate to build a dock like in an adjacent lot to ours. And there's a pretty good argument that it could use a splashboard to better the protection of whatever's going in there.
I mean, we've had rational arguments from dock builders, you know, in Smith Cove,
Yeah.
you know, around the block, around the corner
Yeah.
from the ferry and places like that. And, you know, I don't really like the concept of them, but if they're gonna keep a boat from sinking, they might be worth,
One around the
you know,
corner there.
it might be worth saying.
Keeping people safe on the dock.
Right, and maybe we should say splashboards will be,
On a case by case basis, and
yeah,
then we
will
go
be-
back to where we were.
Well, we'll be, discouraged, right?
Can I say one thing?
Yep.
One of the things we always ran into with splashboards was it was a case-by-case basis. You've got, we'll take, let's say Deering Harbor, because I know that better. You get a west
Northwest.
wind out of that. You've got fetch all the way from Pipes Cove, all the way into Deering Harbor. There are people in there that need those splashboards, otherwise they're gonna. And as far as scouring, is that scouring transmitted, if we don't have them, is it transmitted back to the shore? Does that break down that energy and stop the erosion at shore level? Something to think about. I don't think you can make a positive delineation of yes or no. I
If
think
you look along the shoreline of all the places that have groins, it's pretty clear how that sand gets ripped away from one side.
Whole different ballgame.
Not a different
You're talking
ballgame.
about
It's the
like-
same
you're
kind
talking
of,
about longitudinal currents.
it's same,
You're not talking about wave action. You're talking about longitudinal current along the shore.
it's also wave action.
So you're looking at wave action.
Wave action coming into a groin at an angle like this is gonna create the same kind of erosion.
And that is also a longitudinal current. Along a shoreline, it's not the wave action as much as it is a longitudinal current. But where you have a wind-driven wave, that is something that you're trying to
stop, and you're going, that, the only thing that I know that's gonna stop it from sinking
Well, they're all good.
or eroding the shore.
They're all good arguments for not having docks in these places.
Well,
And then people have the docks in those places, probably already have splashboards. So, I think we went through this last time, we got to this point last time. And as far as splashboards go, I mean, I don't want on every point to have to go around and re-vote on this, especially since we're just advising the town board and this is all gonna get rehashed again. So let's move on to the potatoes, the new sections.
You go to I,
We are-
lifts.
Oh, so both of us, yeah, Al, last time you'd asked that it be except in privately owned basins, so I added that language in there. All right,
And that also is in outside waters, no boat lifts,
right.
even though we've been allowing them for years.
We have allowed boat lifts, every time boat lifts come up, it's, do we want to do this? Do we don't want to do this? I think we went through that. We went through it last meeting. This is what the discussion, do you want to reopen discussion on boat lifts now or go with what we agreed to last meeting? And when we went through last meeting, I accommodated you by adding this language and now you're questioning it.
Yeah, just bringing it up.
Why? I accommodated you
Because-
last time by changing the language.
I'm not, this isn't self-interest, this is just.
I know it's not self-interest, but I'm trying to get through this material, which you already covered, and which I already revised based on your input, and now you're coming at me with something else.
I'm just asking. Just asking.
So
You wanna,
so which sections? So this is the page starting 5311 at the top, design and construction. So in thinking about trying to avoid variance requests and the most common type that we get, I wanted to establish an exception for situations where dock on outside water, what I call the outside shoreline, which is later defined, does not reach 4 feet. But there's numerous conditions here. So along the outside shoreline, at locations not previously developed by a dock. Now that was put in there to avoid a situation where you get tear downs. So if you just said for a new dock, new construction, well, take out the old dock, and there are people who would take out an old dock, build a new dock. In the event the proposed dock does not reach a depth of 4 feet at mean low water at a point 100 feet from the shoreline of applicant's property, which is the way we establish where the dock is located. And the applicant's currently owned vessel, again, that condition so that we don't get, well, what if, because we can't anticipate what may happen in the future for boats at a particular location. If it requires a draft greater than 3 feet, I picked 3 feet because we're looking for a 4-foot depth. It's obviously not going to be a draft of 4 feet. It's got to be something less. And the dock might be extended to 125 feet if the extension gets them to at least 4 feet. Bench. So wanted to get thoughts on that provision.
This is just on outside waters.
Yep.
What's the reasoning for the extension to 125? Can you read that again, please?
Basically that they don't get to 4 feet at 100 feet of length. A 100-foot dock doesn't get them to 4 feet. And they have a vessel that, and they own a vessel that requires more than, 3 feet.
Oh, okay, that makes sense now. Thank you, Bill.
It's basically, right now, we're at 100 feet. We've always entertained 125 here and there on outside waters only. It's never been in the code. It's always been 100 feet. But in anticipation of people making requests in areas where they can't get, at 100 feet, they can't get to at least 4 feet of water, I thought it would make sense to establish an exception so that we can accommodate them.
What about inside waters?
I didn't want to,
See, there are plenty of places that are suitable for a dock, except given the way contours have changed and whatnot. I mean, it's just shallower, than.
I didn't think we would want to encourage building longer docks on inside waters where you've got much less room to accommodate docks.
Certain spots, yeah, I mean, you got the 15% thing, and then maybe you have existing pier lines that you could employ.
Well, I would think that this would be totally separate. The maximum of 120 feet, 5 feet. If you needed the draw, I think that would only be valid for outside. I don't think that should be valid for inside at all. I think these are apples and oranges.
I mean, there was an application that maybe didn't get submitted on East Brander Parkway, I think, where they were applying for a dock, and their other docks are longer.
Right next to them.
Right next to them,
Right.
And they have,
That was the pier line exception.
Also the pier line, right?
The pier line.
right.
Oh, we went through a pier line exception last time. It addresses that exact situation.
Okay.
Where you-
Okay, that's what I was getting at just now.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, it's in one of these pages.
In red.
It's the last meeting.
I find it, but
All right.
it is there.
Italian force march.
Yeah, right.
So aside from inside, outside, any other thoughts on that provision?
I think it's rational considering,
it's fine.
considering the, the extremes that we're getting in tides. And, I don't know that that putting the three, that you currently have a vessel makes, if you're putting in the dock, sometimes you're gonna put in the dock before you buy the vessel.
If you didn't have that aspect of it, if you go out to 4 feet, 100 feet, you don't get to 4 feet.
And you'd be encouraged to buy a boat that's only 3 foot straight.
I think just leave that part out.
And then it pretty much translates into 125 feet, except for, if you,
Unless you get to
If
4
you
feet.
get to the depth
if
first.
that's what we want to do.
Right.
But
Well,
then
I
instead
mean,
it's 125 feet. So
You want docks to be safe. You don't want boats sitting or banging off the bottom.
Right.
You gotta,
Can I say something? One of the things that we fought with all the time on this exact issue was navigation. And it's not that you're going to go down, you're not gonna hit a dock. So if this dock is out 150 feet and that one's out 175 feet, you're not gonna come down to the 150 footer and make this big swing in here and then go back up. So the dock line aspect.
That was a whole other conversation we had at the last meeting regarding pier line. This is not regarding pier line. This is a separate,
Alone.
no matter where it's
Well, because we were
located.
talking about inside and outside waters, and somebody mentioned 100 feet, and now let's go to 125 feet. That's all. That's why I brought that up. I didn't know that there was a separate discussion on this, I'm sorry.
Apparently there had been one that talked about existing pier lines.
And what happened there?
So the discussion was that if there are longer docks in an area and you're in the middle of that, making an application and you don't get out, you can't get to minimum depth, then you can extend your dock out to the average vault at that pier line to get to minimum depth.
Wonderful.
Thank you. So let's get back to this one. So yeah, basically, if you don't put in the vessel size, then you are just, if you go out 100 feet, you don't get to 4 feet, then you can extend the dock until you get up to 125 feet, till you get to 4 feet.
I think that's, I mean, the 3-foot thing, probably doesn't mean anything, really. I mean,
Part of it was, I think, it's sort of a spec question. It's like, this is having a boat that actually needs the draft means it's actually an issue. That's why you're building it that far out. You really need that. It creates a present issue right now, as opposed to, I might at some point in the future need this length, therefore I'm going to build it. So it kind of creates that sort of.
And looking at all the variance requests that we've gotten, it's always been my boat draws more than, that's why I put that in, because it's, it's out of need. What's your hardship? What's your need? I have a boat that.
I think out of simplicity, though, it'd be better just to say, you get to 4 feet, that's that. You can go up to 125 feet outside, of inland waters. If you can get to, you can go to 125 feet even if you don't get to 4 feet?
Minimum, right?
If you get out to 100 feet and you don't hit 4 feet, you can extend.
Okay. And even if you don't reach 4 feet, you can still extend. Does
At
that
100,
mean it?
you have to, at 125, you have to reach at least
4 feet. So if it's not going to make any difference, my point is there's no point in going any further if you're not getting any deeper.
Exactly. So that was the.
Okay.
So thoughts, take the vessel requirement out? Is that really going to make a difference?
So
I think so.
I think so too.
Yeah. Mark, you have any?
at least 4 feet. Okay, yeah, so at least 4 feet, that's fine.
Tom, you got anything on that? If we take out the vessel requirement, basically, you get out to 100 feet, you're less than 4 feet, then you can go out to 125 feet, or you hit at least 4 feet. Vessel issue is not part of it. I mean, I think it's.
Yeah, I guess I can see that. I just, dock length, I just have a problem going out far with docks, but I can see where someone who had a vessel is building a new dock and requires that. I can understand seeing us doing something like that. But in general, I don't like the idea of going beyond 100 feet, but this is outside waters, so I guess I'm all right with it, yeah.
All right, so I'm going to strike the vessel aspect out of that. So this refers here, this exception refers to outside shoreline. So defining outside shoreline, I included that below that. The entire external shoreline of Shelter Island, which does not interface with inland waters and does not extend beyond the boundaries established for inland waters. So inland waters are already basically defined at section 128, which is waterways under the code. I just made it more specific. I just added in everything that includes. So it's basically, all of what we know of as our harbors, bays, and creeks, all laid out there. I did put in, and the same points that define inside of Deering Harbor and inside of Shell Point are the same points used at section 128 under waterways. And I just put GPS there in case we want to actually pick a GPS point and make it more clear, which I think would make sense. What was the one? Oh, so Smith Cove Basin, I call that versus, that's Merkel's also, right? So, I don't know.
Assuming that's the same. You have a, Billy?
Bill, hey, are you currently working on draft changes for 128?
No.
Because like previous town boards have tasked the committees, not just the waterways, all committees when they're making, suggested code changes to try to make definitions cohesive across chapters. So I don't know if you were like changing this and then you're gonna change, or you're also changing 128, but it'd be
I made
kind of
it,
good to try to have it cohesive.
yeah, we could ask for that. I mean, I made it cohesive in that I was going to call it inside waters and they call it inland waters. So I figured I'd go with inland waters and it's the same boundaries, it's more specific. But I think it would make sense to change both.
Have whatever it is, exactly the same in different chapters.
I think that the other, that what's in 128 is simpler and more reader friendly. And there's no need to, it's very clear. This, you start looking at it and it's like, where's the points? I don't, it's
Some of the creeks and stuff you named, I don't even know if they appear on all charts and stuff.
a lot of them don't,
Oh,
and
do
some
they?
of them are
Some-
missing, and some of them are missing.
So-
You probably could save a step on both counts and have this definition point to that definition.
Well, I do
Inland
have,
waters as defined by chapter 128 of the town code. Bam. Then if that changes for some reason in the future, this automatically changes with it.
Makes sense. 128 doesn't address creeks.
So, I guess for simplicity of purpose right now, make this point to that, but then ultimately, step two is, well, now if you're gonna have some sort, just like, we all know that there's.
128 is complicated.
Right, 128 would need to be reviewed. I mean, that's so that definition needs to change.
so when you talk about simplicity of reading it, now you read this code section and you've got to go to another code section.
I agree that that's a.
I have,
Just put the same wording in. Just
I
put the same wording in,
always
that's
thought
all.
that the code, that there should be at the beginning of code, one set of definitions for all chapters.
that would be nice. It would be nice.
Like that would be a very simple
Right.
thing. And I
It would be, and
looked
I,
into that for a while. It's kind of a pretty complex thing to kind of do, but you could just basically take out, go to every chapter. I mean, it's something the board has to do. Go to every chapter, pull out beginning of every chapter, the definitions, pull them out of the individual chapters and make it one initial chapter.
yeah, even within the chapter itself, it's difficult to do that, to have definitions that work within the chapter without defining within it. I'm not going to get into all what I've run into, but it's almost impossible because you have
Every chapter can say at the beginning if the definitions are on page 1 kind of thing, something.
if you could apply the same definition to all the different chapters, that would be great. But it doesn't work that way when you read through them. All right, let's keep
One
going.
last thing, if you're going to enumerate them, Chase Creek is on.
Chase inside of,
Barnyard Creek isn't on either.
didn't see those on the map, on the chart.
Yeah, well,
I mean, Chase is a contributory to Daring, so if we want to say anything that's.
Well, I tried, and I tried,
I mean.
You're gonna get into Dickerson.
You said Venantic,
Yeah.
Eminent.
all right, can I just, that's why it says in tributaries, okay? So, I mean, trying to be as specific and inclusive as possible.
Okay.
I like detail. I think it's readable, but the point being, we have inland waters and we have outside shoreline. So different approaches to it. I'm not, particularly wed to any one of them. I just want to specify.
I believe the DEC uses the words "and its tributaries" quite often when defining inland waterways.
Yep,
If that's any.
Was you?
so did I, yes. All right, so outside water is pretty simple. Outside shoreline is pretty simple. Next item is 5311J, design exceptions. That's what we're up to here. This is basically kind of the what sprung from suggestion last time that we come up with a variance type or not anti-variance type provision. So trying to head off variances, that's where this was going. Design exceptions be considered, they shall be considered in cases of extreme hardship, subject to the following. Conditions or situations resulting or possibly resulting from applicants' actions or proposed actions shall not be considered hardships. This is where they basically put themselves in a position where they've created a hardship. I can run through various examples, but I know we've seen plenty of them in applications that come our way. Structures, modifications, and alterations designed to reduce the impact of wave action indicate that a location is unsuitable, that'll be defined, for maintenance of a vessel, and therefore an exception shall not be considered due to the danger the location poses to persons, property, and environment. So this is the whole shift toward limiting where docks can go.
Which was, Skylar made the point that if somebody developed a dock next to him, that, I mean, they are, it's within inland waters, it's sort of a suitable place as proven by Cockles Harbor. But to make the dock safer, it might be considered.
Or arguable that's a place you shouldn't put a dock.
Well, I mean, in the wrong weather conditions, we could rule out a lot of places.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the fact that there's a giant fetch, between, the causeway and, that section of shoreline, there'd be a lot of docks that wouldn't be there.
70 knot breeze in any direction, you cross out a lot of viable docks real fast.
And that's why a lot of people have moorings.
And why a lot of docks should exist. Goes on, the next is all possible code compliant alternatives shall be examined before an exception is considered. And finally, the specific conditions that result in the granting of an exception, which shall apply solely to the applicant's location. So trying to get away from establishing precedent, shall be recorded and made a part of any permit granted. So we have a record. In considering the granting of an exception, the town board shall consider all criteria set forth under section 19 of this chapter. A couple of changes were made to section 19, just so I put them in right below that. The one, they'll consider public access, beaches, general recreation, fishing, shell fishing, swimming, a new term which succinctly states what I was driving at last time, which is blocking of people's views, provided by our former chairman, John Needham, preservation of scenic vistas, which I think takes in that whole concept really well, and aesthetics. And then finally, whether a mooring is a more suitable alternative to a dock as a means to access navigable water. Things for the town board to consider when deciding whether to issue an exception or not. So, below that, let's see. So thoughts on design exceptions?
I have a problem with the, I mean, you know, to some people, a dock is an attractive addition. And to other people, it's not. I mean, it's subjective. And I don't think that should be in there.
What are you referring to?
The, you know, the scenic vistas and aesthetics. That would allow us to say, well, I don't think that would look very good there. And it's subjective.
Well, that's aesthetics. That's what some person considers, and it is subjective. It's what one person considers beauty, another person considers ugly.
Right.
It's subjective.
Right.
I think it's the last thing to be considered, but it is something to be considered. I don't think an application would turn on aesthetics and aesthetics alone. I think that would be a very difficult position to take and back up, but I just put it on a list of things to be considered. If it's one of 5 issues, I think it should be considered. I think it helps. Preserving scenic vistas is a different story altogether. That's objective. I'm looking out the window and there's a billboard in front of my window. That's not subjective. That's something blocking my view. So it's either you're going to preserve the view you have, and as has been pointed out, people pay a lot of money for their property taxes to be on the water, to have a view. To look out the window and look at the bottom of somebody's boat is not something I think many people would find attractive. If that's not the issue, it's just blocking their view of something else. I don't think someone should have the right to build on town property and block someone's view they're paying a lot of money for.
Well, I mean, I guess it depends where you look. I mean, don't look at your neighbor's property, then there's a lot of things I don't want to see on my neighbor's property.
But you're not looking at neighbors.
I'm just saying.
You're looking out over town property. You're looking out at the water. It's not your neighbor's property.
No, but you know, if you extend your property lines seaward, you know, you shouldn't have something in front of that. But your neighbor, you know, he may have the ugliest boat in the world, you know, like whatever. And, you know, but that's his choice, you know, I mean.
Well, it's on the dock is one thing, up in the air is another thing.
Well, you just said no new lift, so you don't have to worry about anything being up in the air anymore.
Oh, but this is referring to people looking for variances. This is something, if someone wants an exception to the code, that's when you would consider this, not in all cases. This is merely for exceptions.
Tom has his hand in the back.
Hey, Tom?
Just my opinion. I kind of think you're crossing the line and you're trying to be an architectural review board, which we do not have. We do not want. I do not want. And from what you've just been here briefly, it's obvious you don't want any docks. You've said that a dozen times since I sat here, and that's where you're headed every. I think you're crossing the line for what the board, in my opinion, what the committee is supposed to be doing to what you want to do.
Well, we're certainly not looking, we don't want any docks, has never been stated. That's not the point. We don't want docks in areas that are not suitable for docks. And that's all we're talking about here, not no docks. As far as architectural review board, you're dealing with a person's property. When you say to them, we don't like the way that looks, you can't build that house on your property. This is not that person's property. This is town property. And for someone to be able to build a structure.
In your opinion, yeah.
No, it's not my opinion. It's New York state law,
Right,
held up by a federal court.
Building that dock is paying a lot of taxes to put that dock there.
Well, no, they're not paying a lot of taxes. It's actually been ferreted out that it doesn't amount to a lot of tax.
Semantics.
Well, no, because no, it's not semantics. They're paying real estate tax on their property. And then they put a dock in, and it amounts to a pretty small amount of money that they're paying an additional property tax. And part of that is because they have a vista. So what you're doing is you're charging people because they're on the water and they have a vista. And then you want to be able to let their neighbor block the thing that they're paying for. That's not even on their property. It's built on town property.
If you and I don't want to dig everyone here for hours, but if you and I were neighbors, I could not have a dock because you don't want to see a dock. Or I
No,
may be
that's-
next door and say, hey, I'd love to see a dock at that property because it's a beautiful structure.
That is not at all the case. We are not preventing people from building docks because they block people's views. It is a consideration when someone applies for a variance to do something on their dock that's beyond what the code permits. They can have a dock. It's just if they're looking to do something on that or with that dock that's outside the code, then one of the things the town board would consider before granting them a variance is that scenic vistas should be preserved. So you're going far afield with this as far as restrictions goes. No,
I think we're both on opposite ends of this.
no, but you're not considering the fact that this is only in extreme situations where they're looking for a variance. The code is not restricting this.
Can this be worded in a way where it says that like this applies when it pertains to the nature of the variance and not the dock itself? Like if you had a 100-foot dock, then maybe you couldn't operate under these pretenses. But if what you're asking for in a variance then more offensively violates this person's vista or aesthetic, then that would be considered. Does that make sense? Not quite.
Yeah.
I think that's what you're
It's
saying.
basically what it is, right? Like it's not the presence of the dock in concept.
No, it's not.
It's just the nature of the variance requested and how that affects the aesthetic.
Yes.
Okay.
And if your neighbor says, I really like to swim there, you're gonna,
That's a different topic.
well, it's all in the same thing. So letter D. I like to fish there. There shouldn't be a dock there.
Interesting, because you've actually opposed structures in areas where you like to fish. But
In concept, but I voted for him because I felt the person had the right. You can check my record on that.
A given homeowner would have the ability to object to any dock regardless,
Right.
right? Even if it's fully compliant, we've still had people that come in and say, I don't think it should go there anyway,
Right.
right? Even if it
Right.
is. So that's just something that gets considered overall, I would think, in every decision, regardless of whether there's a variance request or not.
if it's within code, then we're obligated to permit the dock.
Right, but they can still, the town board could still consider the fact
Oh, yeah.
that a neighbor is upset about it, right? Like, that you're not creating an opportunity that doesn't already exist.
Right. No, exactly. Exactly. And, and it's one of many things to be considered. That's all it is. That's all the list provides.
I think it should be gone.
What should be gone?
Letter D.
Most of the letter D is already in the code.
In other places, right? You don't need it.
No, it's under 53.
And the aesthetics part, it goes back to, in our building code, there's nothing, we have no architectural review board, we have nothing that deals with aesthetics, for buildings. Why should they be for docks? Unless we're gonna go the whole route.
But Al, he's not suggesting we put it in the code. Per se, the code exists as is, and as Bo pointed out, if you build your dock based on what's in the code, what's being discussed here doesn't kick in. So you have you have an absolute right to build your dock based on the code.
These are just things to be
No one's
considered.
taking that away from you.
These are just things to be considered if someone wants a variance. If someone wants to go outside the code, these are a list of things the town board would consider.
No one's saying they don't like the looks of my dock, so I can't build a dock. If it's 100 feet, that's this and that.
It's come up.
And it should come up. There are things that, if someone wants a variance, all these things, you don't think any of these things should be considered if someone wants a variance, that they should take into account public access, or that, it's a public beach, or that it's going to block recreation or prevent.
This, we insist on every dock. We have never allowed.
You're making
Dock on something.
making my point, so they should consider that. How about beaches? How about general recreation or fishing, shell fishing in the area? Or whether it's preventing people from being able to swim there.
All right. Bill, aren't these things considered anyway, regardless of whether they're asking for a variance or not? I mean, when somebody comes before us with a permit, we kind of take into these things into consideration, even if they do meet code, right? I mean, is that wrong? Or, I mean, I always thought that at least some of these items were taken into consideration, even without a variance.
Yeah, they may cause us to move a dock or yes, you're right.
Yeah, so this is already a consideration regardless, in some cases, in some of these particulars.
And whether we put them in the code here or not, someone sitting on the town board, probably consider these things anyway. It's just a checklist. It doesn't have any, it doesn't have
I don't think
any,
it harms to codify it. Even though they're all considered, you consider them now, but it's not a bad thing to codify.
yeah.
It's less arbitrary. It's consistency.
And none of them are binding. They're just considerations, that's all. In an extreme situation where someone wants a variance.
Not to beat a dead horse, going back to the splash board, I would not out of hand rule them out. Perhaps splash boards
Or should be discouraged.
are discouraged, and and if you're trying to put, if your dock is in a place that is overtly unsuitable for a dock, then yeah, you shouldn't, splash boards aren't going to help you with your dock. But if your dock is in inland waters and you just happen to have a big fetch, splash boards could be a viable thing to make your dock safer and more usable, especially if there are docks on either side of you with splash boards. I mean, I would take this, I know we're trying to get everything so it's 100% done, but I mean, part of our job is to review things, as situations come up. I know maybe it got away a little bit and we were, everything was a variance at one point and we're trying to fix that. But I mean, I think there still is some level of us reviewing each thing individually and saying whether something should be or shouldn't be. To outright say something you can't have may not be 100% right.
But then wouldn't be somebody be asking for a variance to that provision of the code, just like the length people asking for.
Well, you're saying that that's not a criteria that you would accept as a, you're out of hand saying that's not something you even look at. I think you need to, there's no perfect code, and sometimes, you get to a point where you got to make a hard decision, and we're making sort of hard decisions now, but I think, you don't want to make it so that, there's no room to view each situation as unique.
So basically splashboards would be part of like 5311J2, structures, modifications, alteration. And what you would suggest is that splashboards be
Not accepted out of hand, but, reviewed in the context that they're applied for. I mean, if you're trying to make, make a silk purse out of a pig, it's not gonna happen if the dock is in a bad spot. You can put splashboards and boat lifts and everything else. It's not gonna fix the dock. But in certain places, it could fix the dock.
I'm on board with you, James.
So they are discouraged. Is basically what you guys would suggest. Is that what you're saying? Splashboards are discouraged?
Discouraged, okay, discouraged. Just like shocking is discouraged. You wouldn't want, that's not a situation that's good for anything.
All right, so this is going back to last times. So discouraged works for you two?
I think so.
I was fine with Richard.
You're with him? So prohibited,
Discouraged.
discouraged. So we got, and Tom, for splashboards, something you would want prohibited or discouraged?
I'm kind of torn. I don't think you should have it, but at the same time, in certain situations, like James said, maybe they will fix a dock, but I think I'd have to go with discouraged.
Okay, so we got a majority, it's going with discouraged. So that'll go back in. Our suggestions to the town board. So basically, structures, modification, alteration, designed to reduce impact of wave action. Well, those are two separate things. Whether so splashboards can still be considered impact of wave. That's just generally speaking, so it takes it out of being a exception and doesn't require the change of the exception language then. All right, so let's see, now we're on 5311A. So the change here was a dock shall not be an impediment nor a menace to navigation or constructed in areas identified as suitable. That language was added. Unsuitable location, so the definitions and suitable locations. A new defined term. Areas impacted by one or more of the following: exposure to wave action driven by wind and or boat traffic, lack of adequate depth, comprised of pristine preserved beaches, and therefore inappropriate for construction of or installation of new docks due to potential harm to individuals, real and or personal property and the environment. Such areas are designated as, and then establish 3 different areas. Probably the simplest one is Mashamik, Section B, which is basically the shoreline from Sunjet Point all the way around to Nichols Creek. And basically that's preserved, not buildable. And we've already established that docks will not be built on land that is not buildable, vacant or not buildable. And then going to, does anyone have an issue with Mashamick being an area that is restricted for docks? Not-
When Mashamick gets subdivided. Do that.
Yeah, just a way to keep it in to perpetuity, I guess you'd call it.
When Mashamick gets subdivided, then they can go back and look at the code again. Right now, as Davis pointed out, and I thought was a good point a while back when we first brought it up, was hopefully the fact that they can't build docks there will be a consideration before they decide to do something like that.
I'm not saying that I want to see them subdivided and sell off the property. Don't get me wrong, I'm just looking forward.
Well, right now, as we're dealing with the now, and right now, we're saying that docks can't be built on the property that is vacant or undevelopable. So that basically covers all Mashamick.
Unimproved, is that the property your property that's unimproved? Is that the right term?
No, because that can be developable and just not, it's either it's vacant or it can't be built on, basically.
Okay.
So the next section was section A. That's basically from Hay Beach Point all the way to Real Point. And then we'll delve deeper into this. Section C is from Shell Beach Point all the way around the coast up to Jennings Point, which is Camp Quinnipiac. So the way we arrived at this, we started out with that questionnaire that we passed out to everybody a while back, identified all these areas on the outside shoreline, and asked whether members considered them an issue, each specific area an issue with regard to depth, exposure, navigation, or public or pristine beaches. And so we got all the responses for that. And basically for the area, A Beach Point to Ram's Head, all 6 members at the time, before you came along, all 6 members indicated that all that entire shoreline was exposed. For the area from Shell Point, not only exposed, but there was also a depth issue. That was also a majority of the members had an issue with depth along there. For the area from Shell Point to what I'll call Quinnipiac, we had 5 out of 6 members identified all 4 areas as exposed. So that was a starting point as to where to, what to consider. And then we basically went and pursued get data to determine whether, beyond our opinions, this is something that can be established in fact by the data that's available. And so what we have is basically a couple of maps that we provided. They were passed out. The first is an exposure measurement map. This is wind weighted. This takes into account, and I'm going to let Matt speak more to this because he's the tech guy who managed to put this all together. But this map, does everyone, you guys all have this? I do. You don't have a copy of it? It'd be in the pile that was, here it is down here.
This is the one. So if you want to put that one up on the screen.
I go 30 grand, but.
All right, well, here. So, this is basically a measure of the wind experience, and this is based all on NOAA information. So this is a measure of the wind in these areas combined with the fetch that the exposure you have from fetch. And so it's pretty clearly, the higher, the more impacted areas are bright red. So if you look at the map, you'll see from basically, well, it didn't go all the way out to Shell Point. There's no point because you're not going to build anything on Shell Point, but on Shell Beach. But from basically that point all the way north to Camp Quinnipiac, you see is highly impacted by wind and fetch. And then you get the same experience from Hay Beach Point all the way out to bottom of Ram Island. So that's what led to establishing those areas that are unsuitable. And if anyone has any questions about how, the data behind that or anything, then Matt can speak to that. But that's how we came up with delineating those areas. Along from Hay Beach Point out to Ram Island, it's not just, even without wind exposure and wave action, that shoreline, 95% of it is just, way too shallow to put a dock in anywhere along there. Depth is not the issue on the other shoreline.
I have a couple of questions on that. Number one, we're limiting or taking away a riparian right. That's my first question. Secondly, we're diminishing the value of that particular piece of property. So then the taxation would be different on those parcels?
If the fee concept that Matt talks about, if something like that were adopted, then that part of your tax related to docks wouldn't be charged. They'd only be charged if they had a dock. So.
But the value of that particular piece of property has been diminished because I can't put a dock there.
The potential value.
Well, the potential value, exactly.
I question what value having a dock at a piece of property has when you can't keep a boat on that dock.
That's my problem. I'm the property owner. If I have the wherewithal to build a dock that is substantial enough for me to keep my boat there, I don't know how you can stop, but I don't know how you can take that riparian right away from the person.
Remember, docks are not just for boats. The town board has approved docks, and they said, if I don't have a boat, we just want to sit on the end of the dock and have lunch on the end of the dock and fish off the end of the dock with grandkids and stuff. So everybody's talking boats, but, and again, to me, a dock is for a boat, but there are town residents that.
Your opinion is carried through by the federal court who ruled on law of the state of New York that the purpose for a dock is to get the navigable water for a vessel. So building a dock for going out and fishing or staring at the stars is not the purpose of a dock. It's to get the navigable water. So, and so you're,
That's up to the home.
no, it's not up to home. It's the riparian right gives, the definition of riparian right is that it gets you to navigable water. And the court has issued opinions that state that there are other ways to get to navigable water, and they recommend a mooring in areas that are unsuitable. So your riparian right's not being taken away, you're giving another method of taking advantage of
I gotta say,
riparian.
Bill, I've turned down putting moorings out in front of those exact areas. I wouldn't put a mooring out that area.
I don't blame you, I wouldn't put a dock or a mooring in that area.
Well, but that's up to you. But that's not up to the.
It's not up to me, it's
up to
it's up to Mother Nature. That's what we're dealing with. This is what's making the situation here is.
But you're taking areas that you do have docks today, and you're saying, can't put it.
And none of those docks have boats on them because boats can't be maintained in those areas.
That's not.
I don't know of any.
The most part is true.
Most part, you're right.
I don't know. I don't know.
I'm not saying that it's maybe imprudent. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying, I hate to take that, I don't see how we can take that right away from that person when that is what a riparian right is. That-
Again,
and
we're not.
it doesn't go to me, it goes to the property. It's the property that has that right.
Right.
And that gets transferred from owner to owner. So I don't see, if my neighbor has a dock and he has his boat on it, or doesn't have his boat on it today, and he puts it there tomorrow, and he takes it off and he puts it in a boatyard because there's an impending storm, that's a prudent thing to do. But if the kids are down, we're gonna go fishing and grandma wants to come, I wanna be able to put that on my dock and have my family
So
go on.
this doesn't take away the riparian right. This gives you always have a riparian right. You can get to that navigable water with a mooring. If you find it's too rough to keep a boat out there on a mooring, then you probably should have two moorings, a mooring outside and a mooring inside. You can do that with the dock. If you're gonna have a mooring to move your boat to when it's too rough to be on the dock, then I guess you could have another mooring to move your boat to when it's too rough to be on a mooring in front of your house.
Ask you 2 questions. Why not put a dock out there? Because it's too rough?
Basically, because you can't maintain a boat there in those conditions.
Okay, so now forget the boat. I want a dock in front of my house to watch the sunset.
Well, as I just said, that it's,
I understand that, but not every dock on Shelter Island has a boat on it. It doesn't make that dock unlawful. So let's just go back to the dock. We build the dock.
we're not making the existing docks unlawful.
Well, in a sense, you'd like to if it gets destroyed and you won't let me rebuild it. So my question is this.
No, it's not what it says. It says that it can be rebuilt in kind and place.
You don't want docks in certain areas. So if my dock gets destroyed, you're not gonna want me to rebuild it. My second part of the question is, if I spend $300,000 on a dock and it gets destroyed, and I spend another $300,000 on a dock, and it gets destroyed, and I spend another $300,000. How is that any concern of you or this committee or the town board? Aside from the fact that the town is making $30,000 in fees for me to rebuild a dock.
It's not my concern that you're spending $900,000 on
So then
docks.
why not let me build a dock?
Because it's got nothing to do with how much money you want to spend. It's got to do with whether it makes sense to maintain a dock there.
But it only doesn't make sense to you. It makes sense.
No, it's not just me. This is based on data that is collected from all sorts of different sources. This is not something we just came up with.
There are docks there on these spots that are still
Exactly,
standing today.
and there are houses there are buildings that are non-conforming all over the place. Doesn't mean you can build the same building next to it
The
today.
docks are still standing, so how are you telling me that this is an unsafe location?
Because the dock is different from the vessel that's attached to the dock. The thing it's unsafe for is the boat. And when the boat is an
There aren't
unsafe,
any boats on those docks.
because it's too unsafe.
But
You're
not
answering
to sit-
my
not to sit
question.
on. And you're going back to this law, which is open to huge interpretation.
Well, interpret it. It's been interpreted by a federal court looking at New York state law. John?
I think the bigger issue, and it's not gonna be something this committee's ever gonna solve, that this community of Shelter Island has these shorelines and wetlands, waterways, and their natural resources. That's one way of looking at them. So then the debate comes down to, how much to let those natural resources to be preserved versus developed.
Following up on that, I mean, we have kind of a fiduciary responsibility to oversee how town land is used, as vis-a-vis what is on it, on our underwater land.
Sure, yeah.
So, I mean, Tom, I don't disagree with your point of view. I mean, yeah, I'm sort of a property rights person, but I've come to see, especially there was a lot of contention over a dock that was just put in Silver Beach, and a huge proportion of the neighbors, one of them is on the screen now, maybe she wants to talk to us about this, but they were against it, and there was no provision in the code to stop it, and so it went forward, I'm not sure, even if we, impose this or put this in the code, whether it can't be challenged down the road, whether it goes to court and, the town loses, I don't know.
You're definitely gonna bring in lawsuits, and anyone can see that going.
It's possible. I mean, I'm very conflicted, but I to put something where it doesn't have any good reason to be there.
But you also gotta look at what's better for the town. Telling a few people they can't have docks or leaving the town open to a lot of litigation. They have to weigh both. And I'm not the one to weigh it.
Right.
But it's something you gotta consider, especially you guys.
Well, we're just recommending, the buck doesn't stop here.
My feeling is, we live on an island, and there's one way off. So yes, there's two ways off. In an airplane or a boat, but, if people want a dock, just to be able to have that opportunity to leave. It's just.
Got two ferries.
There are two ferries, and thankfully there are two ferries, but that's not, it shouldn't be the only way off.
Bill, can I say something?
Sure.
Why don't you just move this forward? I mean, take a vote on this, on the assessment. And move it forward to the town board. I'm sure we're gonna have a hearing on this. We'll discuss it. It's gonna have a hearing, and people will have a lot of opportunity to come in and talk about it.
Okay.
But I just think it's kind of going around here in a circle now. And let's just make a decision and move forward.
Well, we'll get a
Right
vote.
or wrong, it's just make a decision.
No, I appreciate that. And so we'll get a vote. Al, your vote on whether those defined areas, well, let's do it this way. Break it down by area. So Mashamik, I think we were unanimous on Mashamik.
Didn't really vote.
We didn't really.
I know. Okay. Well,
But we should.
we should vote. Let's vote on, so that's section D. Mashamik, Al, do you have an issue with that? James?
Okay with it.
Matt? Mark? Okay. All right. You're good. Tom? Good.
I'm all right.
Right. So 7-0, okay with restricting docks at Mashamik. Then section A is A Beach out to Ram, Real Point. Al,
No,
against the restriction.
I'm against the restrictions. Well,
James?
I'm in favor.
Matt?
In favor.
Mark?
I'm against it, and although I've repeatedly advised friends and neighbors not to build there, I think if they want to do something that's quite that stupid, then they should be able to do it.
You're talking from Hay Beach out to Real Point?
Yes.
So we got one. I'm for it.
think I'm against it as well.
Okay, Tom?
I'm for the restrictions in that outside section.
All right, so we got 1 for, 2 for, 3 for, 4 for, 4 to 3 in favor for A. And then for last section is C is Michelle up to Jennings Point. Al?
Against it.
James?
I'm in favor.
Matt? Mark?
I'm in favor of letting people, if they want to be so stupid as to put it there, they should.
Are you against the provision or for the provision?
Against.
I'm against it.
Okay, for you,
Against the same way for that one.
Tom?
I'm for restrictions there.
Okay, so I think we got the same numbers.
Same.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
What's the coverage on that one again?
that's,
Bell Beach to Jennings.
oh, the coverage is Shell Beach to Jennings Point.
Final count.
4 in favor, 3 against. All right. Somebody's calling in a vote. People coming from all over the place.
Mother Nature, she said.
All right, let's see. Next, got the.
Last
Are we
license fee.
going to the dock license fees?
Right. This is, last item is the annual dock site license fee discussion. Matt, fire away.
And I actually didn't realize it was actually going to go on the agenda. I was more for sending it around to talk to different, to raise the issue. I said I was going to reach out to the assessor's office. I did, got the information back. So, it's sort of short form, it's like about $90,000 comes in from tax assessments to docks specifically. And so the proposal I'd had about the site license fee would raise substantially more from that. The real question is so the town board, if they so chose, could, even eliminate the assessment on docks and still have more money in their cash coming in if they actually had the site license fee. Just for people in the audience, the reason I think the site license fee is, is important is because it's town property. So it's usage of by a private party of town property. And I think there should be some annual fee associated with that rather than just letting people have it. I think if they're going to put in a dock or have a dock on town property, it does displace other uses. Now they're vindicating their riparian right by having this particular dock. I don't think it has to be vindicated with the dock. So I just wanted to sort of explain my rationale behind that. We've already talked about it, so I don't want to reopen a can of worms, but I wanted everybody to have my sort of thoughts behind that and sort of the information behind that as well.
Bill? Just a question, if I may. So, I was under the understanding that the town board liaisons, Ben and Al, tasked the committee, this committee, and other committees especially this committee, to work on drafting codes, see what problems were in codes, dock links and stuff like that, which you guys have taken a good, hard look at. That's only one chapter, you have another one. I was unaware that the town board tasked you with other additional revenue streams. That's true, Ben and Al?
It came up at a meeting. Al basically took on the whole fee issue when the dock fees were raised.
There was a proposal, I think, that came out about counting pilings and this and that. And
I thought that was for application It's not for an annual.
No, that was for applications. And so it sort of started this
Part of the whole conversation regarding fees. So this is how we got,
Right, it was just.
and it came in under, it came in under this.
Be going through, yeah.
It came in under this chapter because we have dock inspections. That's, so with the whole idea of inspecting docks to make sure they're properly maintained was brought up. And so this is so we got involved in fees from dock inspections because it's going to fall upon the town employees to serve that function. So that's how the fee.
They already have to do that now. I mean, I assume, well, if you out, you go past like Helen Rosenblum's dock and you saw it was in bad shape, you probably called the building department, the dock inspectors and said, hey, you should go out and take a look at this. Or you see someplace floating dock has come half undone.
That's just random. If we're actually talking about a
Thank you for your government, that's what we need.
making sure that people's docks are, and we did it basically, when a property gets transferred or something like that, that you want to do an inspection, make sure the dock is in good shape.
May I ask what the problem was that created this whole
Yeah. Is it a
crazy
solution?
idea?
Looking for a problem?
What is the problem that created this thought?
Docks deteriorating and not being maintained and falling into disrepair.
What does that have to do with anyone but the homeowner? Now you enter it as the town, not you, but the town is not gonna go out and inspect. And then some kid gets hurt on that dock. Does it go back to the inspector for missing the board that might have been missing?
I don't know, is that the case across the board with required inspections of property on the island?
So there is definitely some liability. If the inspector goes in, approves it, and there's no smoke alarms, they're gonna have to prove that they were there when they inspected. Am I wrong?
I don't know, it's not my purview.
So my original question, what was the cause that brought this idea?
Right.
And I answered that by saying that concerned about the condition of docks around the island.
Who's concerned?
Well, I know I brought it up, Tom, like specifically, I brought it up to have as well.
An annual fee and have docks.
No, that's not what you
Dock
asked.
inspections.
Right.
Yes, it is.
No.
Problem up, Paul.
The idea of looking into docks, right?
No. What's brought up the idea of having an annual fee?
Well, I think they just explained that.
And the answer to that
The
question,
evaluation for the dock permits to begin with, right? Like right now, the dock code already, in the permit that you get, grants the authority for the town to enter upon your property, and come and look at that dock, right?
Once, and you're required to maintain it.
You are required to maintain it, absolutely, right? And so but there's no follow-up provisions for any of that, right? So you have this dock that's, a permit is issued, let's say in 19, fill in the blank.
Well, that's my question.
Right.
Where is the problem?
We are having problems with docks that are falling apart that people are not paying attention to.
That's what I'm asking.
Right.
He didn't give me that.
I'm telling you, I brought that up.
That's what I'm asking the committee.
I know,
I'm telling
and
you,
you're
I
talking
brought
about
that
putting a
up.
buoy in front of one. Well, you're talking about putting a buoy in front of one.
Right, which was a suggestion from this committee because they're paying attention to what's going on.
Could that be added to your job description?
No, they're the dock police. They already are, and that's already the case. The building department is the dock police.
Yeah, but you guys are on the water.
And
Do you see something you-
So we work with, just like we work with all the rest of our partners in the town government, if we see something that's not necessarily in our purview, but have been privileged to see it, we forward that along to the appropriate authority.
So those
Can
guys.
can I just speak? The committee's having a meeting. They should be able to go through their business and then open it up to the public for comments. And we're going on 2 hours here. Let the committee go through their work. You don't have to agree with it. There's time enough. You can give your comments after they go through their work.
And there'll be public
And there'll be
hearings.
public
with the
hearings.
Legislation.
But you go back and forth in banter. It's not an open session. It's after the meeting, you go to the public.
With WMAC, Al, they used to get, when I was on the board, WMAC, and when I was the liaison to WMAC, we got a lot of valuable input from this back and forth.
You
stuff.
have, at the end of the meeting, you can give all the valuable input, and I think it's worthwhile. I think it is. any piece of legislation is better with input. I'm not arguing that. Let them do their work, and then open it up to the public.
Well, so
Go
we're,
to the podium, all you want. I'm not, you know.
all right, hold it, stop, enough. Thank you, Al. I entertained questions during the meeting. I'm not gonna, we're done with any other questions. We've had them all. We've covered what we wanted to cover tonight.
We want to go around and talk about what we think about
The fees,
the thing.
I was simply going to have it submitted to the town board for their consideration, but we could go around
Well, I
and,
don't know that it's a recommendation of this committee that they
right.
forwarded to the town. I mean, it's just.
No, you're right.
Matt, it's
not.
Matt's
Right,
suggestion.
You're right.
You know, so I think, you know, we should weigh in on what we think.
Al? Go ahead, fire away.
You know, I think, you know, there exists, you know, the taxation of a dock in place already, the infrastructure to do that, you know, the, you know, how the procedure is done, it's there already. You know, not to mention the people are already paying a premium to have a place where they can have a dock that they can get charged extra for. To create a whole new infrastructure of trying, you know, of measuring the dock and figuring out how much we should charge for each dock, and then tasking somebody to go out and, you know, confirm all that stuff on a, you know, a yearly basis, seems like it just adds just one more layer that we don't need. You know, I don't think it's, you know, a giant problem that is pervasive throughout Shelter Island. Bo has pointed out there are some docks that need some work, and he has, rightly so, you know, advised the appropriate agency in the town to go and take a look at it, you know, and you know, somebody, you know, a neighbor is going to take a look at, you know, his neighbor died, you know, like 10 years ago, and the dock's falling apart and the kids don't maintain it and whatever, you know, that dock's falling apart and it's going to hit my boat. I'm calling the police, you know, and then they'll talk to the town. I think just adding more for not a really bona fide reason, I don't see the need for it. You know, if there was a crashing need to do this, you know, there already is in place that the building department is supposed to take a look at docks when required. I don't know that it has to be on a yearly basis, but I think it should be, you know, as a result of notice that there's a need to look at a particular dock. You know, like I made mention of a place that, you know, where the bulkhead's washed out, and, you know, to create this whole fee infrastructure, I think is not something I would support.
Al?
I agree with James wholeheartedly. You know, you'd have to hire somebody with some skills that it's going to be a six-figure job. And then you have the healthcare and all that, you know, it's like, it's just it's overkill. It's just overkill for something that there isn't a justifiable need for.
Matt, I know where you stand. Do you have any feedback or anything to add to?
Not really. I mean, I guess the one thing I would add is, or sort of how do people feel about, well, I guess the thing that one of the things I care about is the giving away of the public space for private use without compensation.
You do that for moorings too. Moorings take up navigable water. It's you know, and you pay your fee and that's it. And I think with the dock, the fees are so much higher. I mean, I gave an example when you brought this up the first time, that Silver Beach, if you own an acre of property, you're probably paying about $5,000 a year in taxes. If you live on East Brandon Parkway, you're paying close to $19,000 or $20,000 a year in taxes. You're paying annually for that right or that privilege to take up some of town property.
Are you?
Yeah.
What about people who don't have a dock?
They're paying a little bit less, but they're paying for that right to have that. And that's where we go back to riparian rights. It's they're paying for the right.
What about, they're using the space?
But what about a mooring? Mooring's using the space.
Annual permit fee for work.
That's the rent.
Well, there's they're already paying the tax from the
They're paying
dock.
the
I mean,
tax.
you
paying the tax,
you wanna
they're paying
change the tax from the dock for a fee that then you have to create an infrastructure to administer? I'm just, like.
Okay.
We charge fees for riparian mooring?
Yes.
So
Because they're not taxed.
Right.
it's a riparian mooring. You have it because it's riparian.
No, you don't have because of it, it's just riparian because that's the definition of it, because you don't have to have it both specific. You know, it doesn't give you much more than that, really.
I don't think, I just don't think it would be received well.
I understand that point.
By the 400 people that have the docks. Okay, that's, I think that's a tough thing to swallow.
I think the way we got here, as far as dock inspections go, I think inspections of docks make sense. I think we haven't put in the code that it's done annually or anything like that. We've just put
No, it shouldn't.
that they, on transfer of property or, for a few other reasons. The fee structure, obviously there's got to be some payment for that, and whether it's included or not already, it's this is the concept. I think makes sense. In general, it's basically what I would say. Your viewpoint?
I'm not in favor of this at first glance, but I would want to think about it a little more. Yeah.
Tom, you have any thoughts about fees, inspection fees for docks, or basically a fee for maintaining a dock is what it comes down to?
Yeah, I agree with the concept. I don't agree with the proposed numbers or imaginary numbers that came out that shows that this would be an increase in the town's coffers. I don't think that that's what we're looking to do. But I do believe that it's definitely something to be considered, simply because you are in fact displacing others and their uses of town property. Like I said, the tax, I don't necessarily agree that this should be a property tax because it's not on, private property. But I believe that this also is the reason this came up is because there is in fact a problem of docks not being inspected, and they are in fact not being maintained as they should be. And I think that this is I believe maybe it was a way to generate the funds necessary to get a dock inspector, because obviously the building department is too overwhelmed to do this in a timely fashion. Not by their fault at all, but by just the fact that they are very busy. And I think that this has fallen through the cracks in the past. I've complained about docks being not maintained properly for decades now. This is nothing new for me. So I do believe that this should be looked into. I'm not quite sold on it right now, but I am listening and trying to take it all in.
All right, so, and Mark, I guess, is gone. So, I take it that 2 are definitely opposed to this concept. 3 think the basic concept makes some sense. Matt certainly is into the specific concept. I think I got everybody covered. Yeah. All right.
So just for clarity. Sorry. So the committee has voted and a majority has approved a
Well, no, I think there's still deliberations going
No,
on.
I would say it's very much up in the air.
It was voted on once before, several months ago, and it was turned down.
Yeah, as I said, it was already, you voted on it before.
Should, this a little bit, but, like you said, there's a lot, I had just a lot of disrepair. I'm just wondering, you see a lot of, during the pandemic, I walked around the entire island, literally. And did 3 or 4 mile chunks at a time, but I walked over all these floating docks on one point another. And they definitely have some of the disrepair. There's a couple in Westmoreland area, and there's some over in Van Island. I think bulkheads are bigger issues for the disrepair. But I'm just wondering how many of the, well, I was actually impressed by how most people maintain their docks very well. And I'm just wondering how big a problem you folks face with.
So.
I mean, I can't imagine. I mean, I know that the scenario you made, somebody inherits the property. I know the situation out in West North, I know the people very well personally. And it was an inherited thing, and the dock was gonna cost $300,000 fixed. And I was out there helping a friend put the tanks in and just kind of patching it up. So I saw some of that, but the worst dock is the one down by the Ram's Head Inn, which the town destroyed.
But the Ospreys have saved it, they haven't messed on it.
Where's my levels? But just curious, in this conversation, obviously, curious of how big a problem you face with that you need to levy taxes on all the people that are repairing.
If I may, every winter I complain to the town board, and I've been doing this for decades now, about my biggest pet peeve is floating docks that are not maintained where they're supposed to be maintained. And that number.
Are you saying maintain where their location?
I'm talking about floating docks not being maintained properly.
What do they do? What's
that
happening to them?
that is in fact my biggest pet peeve. And during the wintertime, you can count hundreds of these floating docks not where they're supposed to be. And that is part of
You're talking about something a whole different.
That's and floating docks use water in the winter.
It's, so.
I know what you're talking about, Tom, and I don't disagree with you. It's not that how they're maintained, it's where they're maintained.
It is part of
You're
dock
talking
maintenance.
about.
It's part of dock maintenance. You are required by law to maintain your dock to
In
a
the
certain
pos-
standard. And if you are
You're talking
not,
about floating docks, that's a whole different, that's not what I was looking at. But I'm telling you, the docks are not in bad shape on Shelter Island. The bulkheads are worse.
the majority of the docks are not in bad shape. There are certain docks that are in bad shape, but this is an overall situation where it basically comes down to you are required to maintain your dock as per code. If you are not maintaining your dock, you're not maintaining your dock.
All right, so just for clarity, you're not speaking so much to the condition of the structure. You're referring more to keeping it in a certain place. Is that fair to say?
One is equally as important as the other, I feel.
Sorry, what?
Yeah. One is equally important as the other. They're both of equal importance to me.
But the floats that are being stored in certain spots don't necessarily mean that they're in poor condition. You just don't like them being moved to yet another spot that now precludes Bayman and such from using that spot.
Well, no, some of these floats are up in the grasses where they're not.
Okay, that's whatever. That's the same kind of thing. You know, I mean, it's not that the
It's a location. It's not the
Right,
condition of the.
I agree with him.
That's not what you've been talking about.
Right, that's not.
It is maintenance. You're supposed to maintain a dock, and
We're
maintaining a dock is not having the float up on the marsh grass. That's maintenance.
Okay, it's semantic.
That's a semantic issue.
A semantic issue. All right, so I think we've covered it.
I think it's time to go to dinner.
That's everything on.
Question though, as far as how big a problem we're dealing with. I mean, I was thinking fixed docks, and if that's not the case, then it's a whole different conversation. But what is the answer to my question of how big a problem are we dealing with that we would have to invest time and energy?
Depends who you ask.
That was my question at the start of the whole thing, but we still haven't got an answer.
Well, you heard what we all said, so,
So no one
Well,
knows.
well, I mean, it's a committee, you know, so it's.
Observe, I mean, I respect what he.
Yeah, no, so-
But he's observed, but what kind of
The issues that I specifically was referring to are with floating docks. Yeah, specifically, yes, a component of a permitted dock. And those are the issues that I first brought, to the attention here as a hazard to navigation.
I didn't have to climb over floating docks.
Right, and primarily maintaining them in a way that prevents them from becoming hazard to navigation. That was my concern, because I've noticed just this is the 5th year now that I've been in this capacity, we have seen a marked uptick, and I didn't use the word a lot, I would like to just clarify that, right, because a lot is very relative, right? But there has been an increase in the frequency with which we're dealing with rogue floats, right? And it's not a particularly complicated thing, but it is something that I have noticed. It appears to be a thing that is being overlooked by people, maybe because they don't live there anymore, maybe they transferred, maybe. So, I could get you documented incidents, yeah. But they're low numbers, right? This is just something that, as somebody on the water, I'm going by and I'm seeing, and now I'm retrieving these things and go, wait a minute. We did this once in a while, now it's a kind of a regular occurrence that, all right, we're gonna go fetch some docks. They're swinging out into the channel because one side broke off or something of that nature. So it's just something that I wanted to bring forward as a point of reference, that a permit may go in 40 or 50 years later. You've had your permit, you've had your inspection. There is no follow-up. There's never any follow-up. And that was where my suggestion had come from, specifically with the upon transfer concept. That if you're going to look at the property anyway, maybe check this and make sure it's still compliant with the original permit conditions. That was my thought.
I would venture to say somebody buying a waterfront property on Shelter Island is gonna fix up the damn dock and make it really nice.
Probably.
They're probably gonna knock the house down, trust me, they're not gonna buy a waterfront house and keep a decrepit dock.
I agree with you, but I'm going to stipulate that in that walkabout, there were floating docks that were half in the water, half out of the water.
Yep.
And you looked at them and
In the winter?
No, well, I started in June, ended up on December 31st. I've made it the last day of group weeks. You're still young. Right, but so we're not talking about fixed dock, maybe you can separate these two out somehow. Just the idea of developing a whole business and somebody to do it. I mean, it's not gonna be easy to run check the floating docks and shop around. You're right, a six-digit figure for paying benefits.
I'm available.
Is there a simmer? Yeah, I'm thinking of retirement, I've been boating, I'll run around the island, I'll walk around the island.
All right, I think we got it.
All right.
Seems to me like the parts of
Thank you.
fixed and floating,
Got it.
maybe I'm.
Thanks. I think we're done. I got a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Thanks, everybody.